What's up, guys? Today we're going to cover Unit 1, Topic 1.6, which is market equilibrium and changes. In this lecture, we're going to cover equilibrium, price, and quantity. We are going to cover surpluses and shortages. We're going to cover single shifts, double shifts, and then we're going to finish with price controls, which are floors and ceilings. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. Here you can see, that we've already seen in topic 1.4 and 1.5, supply and demand. We looked at the graphs individually, like the curves individually, right? So we saw demand by itself and we saw supply by itself. So today what we're going to do is we're essentially going to take both of those and put them together, right? And that's what I've done right here, okay? You have price on your vertical axis, you have quantity on your horizontal axis, you have an upward sloping supply curve, and you have a downward sloping demand curve, okay? And notice here that there's an intersection point. And what that means is that your quantity price equals your quantity supplied, right? That means that sellers, right, are meeting buyers and they are selling what people are demanding, right? Or they're producing what people are demanding, right? And so we have, again, our price equilibrium, which is titled P sub E, and then you have your quantity equilibrium, which is Q sub E, right? And again, at that intersection point or our equilibrium point. All right, so let's look and see what happens when there's some disequilibrium in our economy, right? So if we have quantity demanded is less than our quantity supplied, so that means that suppliers are producing more than what people are willing and able to purchase in the market, right? Well, that means that there's more stuff on the shelves, right? So if you go into, like, let's say a 7-Eleven or a convenience store, right, and you go in and you see shelves are stocked with Gatorade, right, then that would essentially mean that there's a surplus of Gatorade, right? They have too much Gatorade. People are not buying enough Gatorade, right? So you're going to have a surplus. And that surplus would look something like this, right? You're going to have quantity demanded, right, is going to be less than quantity supplied. And that would be up here, right? So at this particular price level, right, I'll just put P sub S, right? At that particular price level, people are not buying enough. You can see that right here on the demand curve, right? People are buying this quantity, okay? Q sub D, and suppliers are supplying that quantity, right? So there's going to be more in the market than there is people purchasing, right? And that's referred to as a surplus, right? So you'll see a surplus, and very easy to remember surplus. Surplus, right? That, the end, right? Helps us remember that that's going to be above the equilibrium point, okay? Now, let's look at the flip side of that, right? Let's look at suppliers producing too little, right? And not enough people, the demand is too high, right? So let's say you go into this convenience store, the example that we used earlier, and now you want a Gatorade, but the shelves are empty, right? Well, now you're experiencing what's called a shortage, right? And shortage is short, so it's going to be below the equilibrium point, right? So here we can do, get rid of this up here. And now you can see that this is a shortage. And instead of quantity demanded being less than, quantity demanded is going to be greater than quantity supplied, right? So more people are going to want what's out, more people are going to be willing and able to purchase than what producers are going to be willing and able to produce, right? So at this price level, right, they're not making as much, right? And so, but people at that price level are wanting to buy that particular item, right? So let's say they change the price to Gatorade to, a quarter, right? So everybody's going to want to buy Gatorade for a quarter, but producers are not going to be willing and able to produce Gatorade for a quarter, right? So they're not going to make as much, right? They're only going to make this level right here. We could do Q sub 1, right? And Q sub 2. And then how do we determine how much the shortage is? Well, you determine how much the shortage is by just subtracting Q sub 1 from Q sub 2, right? Or the surplus, same thing, right? You just take the difference of Q sub 1 and Q sub 2, and that should tell you how much is either being overproduced or underproduced, right? Now, in the free market system, right, this will actually equilibrate on its own, right? So the price will move towards equilibrium on its own. There's no government intervention, right? If there's a surplus, producers are going to lower their prices, right? If there's a shortage, producers would then raise their prices, right? So more people will come to the market, right, to produce more. Or producers that are already producing will start ramping up production if they're able to make more off their product, right? Now, let's go ahead and look at shifting your supply and demand curve, right? So let me get rid of some of this stuff here so it's a little bit clearer. Keep that equilibrium point right there. All right, so you have an equilibrium point, right? Or you have your simple supply and demand model here. Now, let's look at, let's say supply is going to shift, right? There's new technology that comes into the market, right? For whatever example you want to use, right? New technology comes in, and we know that technology is a shifter for supply. So what happens? We shift our supply curve, right? And so it's an increase, so we shift it to the right, okay? That's an increase in supply. So then now we want to see and analyze what's happened to our product, right? Well, we can see here that with price, we shifted our curve, right? So now we have a new equilibrium point right here. Our price has gone down, right? And what has happened to our quantity? Our quantity has increased, right? So price has increased, and price has decreased, and quantity has increased. So if you shift supply or increase supply, you'll see a decrease in price and an increase in quantity, right? All right. Now let's say that the Gatorade example that we were using earlier, right? Now that's a substitute, right? Or we look for a substitute for Gatorade, like Powerade, right? And we'll say that the price of you want a Gatorade, right? And the price of Powerade increases, right? So that means more people are going to move away from the Powerade market and into the Gatorade market. Well, what's going to happen here is you're going to see a shift of what? A shift of demand, right? And so our demand curve will increase, right? Shifting to the right. And so we want to analyze this and see what happens. Well, our new equilibrium point is right here, okay? So we can see that our new equilibrium point is right here. So we can see that what's happened to price? Price has increased, right? And quantity has increased. So if you increase demand of a product, what's going to happen to price? That'll increase, and what's going to happen to quantity? That will increase as well, okay? So that's looking at an increase of demand and an increase of supply. Now let's look at what happens when we change the price of a product, right? So if we increase the price of a product, right? Well, that doesn't shift the curve, right? So what is that? That's movement along the curve, right? So if we're here at our equilibrium point, right? If we're here at our equilibrium point and we've changed our price, we've increased our price to, let's say, P sub 1, right? To this point right here, well then what's happened is price has increased, the market has then been put into a surplus, right? Now remember, surplus plus being above the equilibrium points, okay? All right. And then we can look at the reverse of that, right? So if we decrease supply, you would see an increase in price, right? And if you and a decrease in quantity. And then if you decrease demand, you're going to see a decrease in price and a decrease in quantity. Okay? All right. Now, what happens if you have both an increase in supply and an increase in demand, or a decrease in demand and an increase in supply, or one of the variations of those two things? What's going to happen? Well, we want to see again what happens, right, to price and what happens to quantity, okay? And what we have with a double shift is we have what's called a double shift rule, right? Which means that if two curves shift at the same time, either price or quantity is going to be indeterminate or ambiguous. So we're going to know what happens to either price, or we're going to know what's going to happen to quantity, but we're not going to know what's going to happen to both, right? So one of them will be ambiguous. And so we can go ahead and let's say that, you know, both demand and supply increases, right? So we're going to shift our supply curve to the right. We're going to shift our demand curve to the right. And so now we are here, right? So this is a little confusing as to what's going on here, right? So we've shifted demand and then we shifted supply. And so let's label our equilibrium, right? Because that's causing part of the confusion, right? So this is our former equilibrium point, right? And then this is our new quantity, okay? So you can look here, this is our original equilibrium point, and then this is our new equilibrium point. Well, has anything changed with price? Well, no, price here would be what's called indeterminate or ambiguous, right? But quantity, we can see that quantity has clearly increased. Now, this is pretty confusing. There's a lot of things going on here. So what I think the best advice is that you could do is that you could just take these graphs and do them separately. That way, as you do them separately, you can see clearly what's happening, right? So here we'll increase supply. And here we'll increase demand. Okay, so here, a little less confusing, right? So here we've got an increase in supply, right? Let me label these curves so they're a little, okay? So, backwards. We'll do prime. Okay. So this is our first supply curve, right? No, I'm sorry. This is our first supply curve. This is our equilibrium point right here. And so supply increases, right? Supply increases, so price goes up, right? And quantity goes up, right? So you just write that right here. Price goes up, quantity goes up, okay? And then on this graph, our demand graph, we've increased demand. So here's our equilibrium point, P sub E, Q sub E. We shifted demand. This is our first demand curve. This is our second demand curve. And so we can see price has gone up, right? Nope. Price has gone up and quantity has gone up. So real quick, just made a mistake on the first one. Let me just fix that up real quick. So quantity up and then price up for demand. But on supply, this is our equilibrium point right here. Price didn't go up, price went down, right? Hopefully you guys caught that. And so price is down, quantity is up, okay? And so if we look at both of these, right, we can see price is down here, price is up here, quantity is up here, quantity is up on this one. So for sure what's going to happen is quantity is going to increase, but we don't know what's going to happen to price, okay? And I'll do another example just because I made that mistake so that we can make sure that we really understand this, okay? All right, so I'm going to draw the two graphs, okay? By the way, this is what you guys should be doing too as well, is make sure that you guys are drawing the graphs. Really makes sense for you guys to be doing this as well so that you guys are learning this and you guys can see that you're learning this. So I'm going to decrease demand, okay? And I'm going to decrease supply. Okay, so here I've decreased demand, right? What has happened to our curve? It is shifted to the left, and so we can see that price, this is our equilibrium price, this is our new price, so what has happened to price? It has decreased, right? So here if we write a P, we can just put a down arrow, right? Here we can see that price or quantity has decreased, right? Quantity has decreased. So that decrease, we can put Q down arrow as well. Okay, and then supply, right? So on the supply side, we can see that price has increased, right? And we can see that quantity has decreased. So what's happened here, we have quantity decreasing, so we can for sure say that quantity is going to decrease, price decreasing, price increasing, so those are in opposite directions, right? We'll have to say that that's an ambiguous, or that's ambiguous, okay? All right, let's go ahead and move on. Okay, price controls. Now, there's two types of price controls that can be put into place. There are what are called floors and there are called ceilings, right? And so both of these have positive and negative effects associated with them, right? So let's look at a price ceiling. Now, you would think that a price ceiling would be above the equilibrium point because ceilings are up, right? So, but that's not the case, right? Price ceilings are actually going to be binding, right? That's the big word. To be binding, they need to be below the equilibrium point, okay? And because you cannot go above a ceiling, right? The equilibrium point needs to be above the ceiling, right? So let's look at that here real quick. So we have a supply, a demand curve, a supply curve, price, quantity, and then so here would be our price ceiling, right? And so this is a price ceiling that would be P sub E for the price. So what is a ceiling? It's the maximum legal price a seller can charge for a product, right? So if the government were to come in and say, look, guys, you cannot sell cell phones for more than $100. That's the most you can charge. After that, they would regulate the cell phone market. They would push down the price, and you can no longer sell cell phones for that price. Well, what's going to happen is cell phone producers are going to produce less cell phones, right? And since they're going to produce less cell phones, well, you're going to get a shortage, right? And that shortage we'd be able to determine by subtracting Q sub 2 but minus Q sub 1 to see what the actual shortage is, right? And so, rent, right? Rent controls are often done by ceilings, right? You cannot charge above this price. So, like San Francisco sees this, New York City sees this. Different areas of the country see where the government has come in and said, look, you cannot charge above this price. Okay, and so that is a price ceiling. Now, let's look at the opposite, floors, right? Now, floors, oddly enough, are not below equilibrium. They're actually above equilibrium, right? And I'll leave this on the same graph so that way you guys can see this. A floor, for it to be binding, right, must be above the equilibrium point. So you cannot go below the floor, right, and you cannot go above a ceiling. Now, again, at a floor, what we end up producing, or the result of a floor, is going to be a surplus, right? And so think of things that are price floors. Well, what can you not charge? What's the minimum legal price a seller can sell a product, right? Well, think about that. Minimum wage is a price floor, right? You cannot charge below whatever minimum wage is in your city or state, right? You cannot charge below that price for your labor, right? So what ends up happening is that we have a surplus of workers at that particular price wage, right? So we have a lot of people that want to work at minimum wage, right? Well, I don't know, right? So anyway, and that creates again. So floors create a surplus, and ceilings, they create a shortage, right? And that is all that we have for today. Hope you guys got a lot out of this one. Thank you guys. And if you guys could please subscribe, that'd be awesome. Thank you guys. Have a good one.